Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to Polyglot Progress. Fall, or to many of you autumn, is here in the northern hemisphere. The weather's getting a little colder, maybe you've gone back to school, the leaves are changing. Well, the leaves aren't changing here, but maybe the leaves are changing where you are. And the year is wrapping up, which means it's time for one last final push to get all of our overall year-long language learning goals done. I had a lot of fun making my summer-inspired language learning activities video, and a lot of you really liked it as well, so today I am back to give you some ideas to change up your language learning routine in the spirit of fall. I mentioned studying outside in the summer video, and I wanted to kick this video off with a study location recommendation as well. And for fall, for me, that absolutely has to be studying in a coffee shop. I feel like cafes just have such a cozy and productive vibe to them that really just makes them feel like the perfect autumnal place to study or read or write a journal entry in your target language. And as a bonus suggestion to go along with that, try having a study date. I personally really love doing work alongside my friends or my sisters when I'm with them, and I feel like coffee shops are a great place to get together with your friends, your family, whoever, and have a nice little study date together. You don't both have to even be studying a language. It's just nice to have someone there to kind of hold you accountable so you can't just look at your phone the whole time. Obviously, given the pandemic, this suggestion may not be feasible for you depending on where you live. So if that is the case for you, you can, to an extent, recreate this at home. It's of course not the same, but making yourself a fancy warm beverage that you might not drink normally, setting yourself up at a desk or table in your house, and putting on some coffee shop ambient sound video from YouTube or an acoustic music playlist can somewhat recreate that feel for you, or just create a nice autumnal study space for you. Obviously, thinking about fall, a lot of my inspiration and just the feelings I associate with fall are related to academia. And even if you're not in school right now or you're not studying a language at school, there are a lot of kind of academia inspired things that you can do at home to change up your language learning routine. One that you might not already be doing is reading an academic paper. I feel like usually when we talk about reading in our target languages, it's in reference to novels or graded readers or news articles, but reading academic papers is a great way to stretch your language abilities. It's a great way to learn new vocabulary, and it's also a great way to just learn more about a specific topic. And if you're not at the level to read an academic paper in your target language, which is totally fair, there are definitely subjects that I can't read academic papers in English unless I spend a lot of time and have a lot of patience with myself while doing it. You can try still using an academic paper and just modifying how you're approaching it. So for example, you could try reading just a paragraph, or you could go sentence by sentence and try translating from your target language to your native language to see how much you can figure out and understand on your own. Or you could try skimming through the article, picking out all the words that you don't know, learning those words, and then coming back and trying to read the article when you've studied those a little bit more. I'd also recommend starting with a topic that you're somewhat familiar with. Then you're just dealing with new words in terms of the language itself and not in terms of the subject matter. But if you are at an upper level in your target language, definitely try reading things that you don't know much about. If you have a good enough grasp on the language, there will definitely still be new words, the same as there would be in your native language. But you'll be able to understand enough, and you'll be able to learn a lot of new words and expand the things that you can talk about in your target language and your native language, as well, as you end up looking up words and realizing that you have no idea what they mean in your native language either. And if you want something much easier, you could go a slightly different route, and instead of using an academic paper itself, reading articles on a website like Time for Kids in English or one of those type things where it's targeted at a younger audience and really makes things a lot more digestible. You can still read about scientific research or things like that, but the language will be a lot easier to understand, and the article will probably be a lot shorter. And after you read the article, or better yet, articles, you can try writing an essay. I have talked about this a lot, but I really like writing in my target languages as a way to practice output. There's a lot less in the moment pressure, plus it gives you a chance to really slow down and focus on correcting grammar mistakes that you often make, and to look up any new words that you might need. Plus, then you're left with a written down record of everything that you've said that you can go back and correct correct or have corrected and study from. I feel like it's one of those really just perfect language learning activities because it lets you practice reading and absorbing information, it lets you practice thinking in your target language, and it lets you practice output. But more specifically, it lets you practice output in a way that requires you to summarize and repeat back information that you've learned in the target language, which as a tutor and as a language learner, I've found can be one of the hardest things for language learners to grasp. And the more you do this, really the easier it becomes. You really don't have to put any pressure on yourself at all with this. It's not for a grade. You don't have to follow any rules of writing essays if you don't want to. It doesn't have to be great writing. So just have fun practicing your writing and then consider sharing it with a tutor or on a website like Journaly where you can get feedback and learn from your mistakes. We may have a special guest in a moment. We have a guest now. This is Grim. I adopted him this last week. And I guess he's going to be walking around this room for the rest of this video. Studying with a textbook or an exam prep book is not a new method for a lot of people. I know I personally rely really heavily on textbooks as my main resource up until like the upper B1 level. But if you don't tend to use textbooks, or maybe like me, you tend to switch away from textbooks at a certain level, going back or going to textbooks for the first time can be a good way to shake up your language routine and give you some more kind of structured practice. And if you do usually use textbooks, but you don't use exam prep books, that is another good way to change up the way that you're learning or reviewing material. I personally really like textbooks, but I don't tend to use test prep books because I don't usually go for language certification exams. But recently I've enjoyed kind of looking at what I would need to know in order to pass a language certification exam and kind of seeing where the gaps in my knowledge are. Again, even though textbooks don't sound very fun and exam prep books sound quite stressful, honestly, to me, this is not meant to be a suggestion that sucks the fun out of language learning for you. It's just a really good way to change your routine if you don't usually learn or review material that way, and also give you some structured guidance in what you can work on next. And one last academia-inspired suggestion, but one that is rooted a little bit more in immersion, you can try taking an online course. And I don't mean one to learn your target language, though of course you can also do that. But there are so many online courses out there on so many different subjects in so many different languages, and you can definitely find one that interests you and take that in your target language. It's great listening practice, you'll learn a lot of new vocabulary, and again, you'll just learn something new. So not only is it an opportunity to improve your target language, but it's also an opportunity to maybe further your career or work on learning something for a new hobby or just find out something new about the world. Okay, moving on to some non-academia fall-inspired language learning activities. Rewatch a show. This one is inspired by the fact that I feel like it's just universally agreed upon that fall is the time to rewatch Gilmore Girls. But why not rewatch Gilmore Girls with the German audio? I do not usually tend to rewatch or reread books or movies that I originally consumed in my native language again in my target languages, but fall just feels like a time to rewatch things. Like, it feels like it's time for a comfort show. And going back and rewatching things that you're already familiar with in your target language can make the whole process feel a lot less daunting since you're already familiar with the characters and the story. And alternatively, you can also go back and rewatch something that you originally watched in your target language and just see how much more you can pick up this time around and how far you've come since the first time you watched it. Overall, though, I would say that the rule for the fall rewatch is comfort. It doesn't have to mean that it's a warm and comforting show, but pick something that you've watched before and that you really love, maybe has characters that you really love and care about, maybe something that you haven't watched in a while and you can get a little bit of a nice nostalgic feeling while you watch it and get some immersion in. Regardless of what language you choose to watch it in, I would love to know what your fall comfort rewatch is, or if you don't usually tend to rewatch things in the fall, what it would be. Like everyone else, I rewatch at least a few episodes of Gilmore Girls every fall, but right now I have been going back and watching Doctor Who for the first time in 10 years, and It's so fun. So do it. Pick something up that you haven't watched in a long time. Switch the audio into your target language and just enjoy. Speaking of watching stuff, sports are a big thing in the fall, and depending on the language you're learning and the kind of sport that you would want to watch, you might be able to watch a match or event or game in your target language. I feel like so many people just went and skipped to the next activity, but just watching one game or match or whatever is a great way to practice your listening skills in a very visual way as announcers tell you what's happening as you're seeing it. And if you do like sports or have an interest in a certain sport, it's a great way to A, just have fun while you're doing some immersion, and B, learn some new vocabulary so that way you can talk about that sport that you enjoy. If you need a recommendation, I can tell you firsthand that there are a whole lot of roller derby bouts announced in French available for free on youtube.com. I'm guessing many of you are not familiar with the sport of roller derby, so if that's the case, I would recommend looking up a video of the rules and gameplay before you go into it. But I'm just saying it's an option. It's also the only sport that I will watch, so there's that. If sports aren't your thing, maybe you are someone that literally just skipped over the last section and you want to get more in the spirit of Halloween, something you can do is learning about urban legends or myths or ghost stories or just kind of creepy tales from countries that speak your target language in your target language. You could read scary stories related to this. You could read articles about the origin of it. You could listen to a podcast about it. Or if it's something really well known, you could use it as a conversation topic for some practice with a tutor. This one really works for whatever element of language learning you need to work on, whether that's reading, writing, listening, or speaking. And it's also a great way to get in the fall Halloween creepy spirit and also to add a little bit of culture into your language learning. But as someone who grew up in the US, Halloween is not the only holiday that I associate with the fall. Is Halloween my favorite part of fall? Yes. Do I also definitely think a lot about Thanksgiving and the foods associated with Thanksgiving? Also yes. And even outside of the US, fall is a time of harvest traditionally and definitely has a lot of connection to food. So why not try baking a pie or making some sort of warm, savory food using a recipe in your target language? You could try making a traditional dish of a region that speaks your target language. You could go back to an old favorite and just follow a recipe written in your target language for it. Either way, it's a great way to get some contact with your target language and spend some time learning vocabulary associated with food and with the kitchen. Plus, if you're like me, fall is a very busy time, and this is a great way to do language learning even while you're super busy, because by the end of it, you'll have spent some time in your target language and you'll also have dinner. We love multitasking. And then lastly, also inspired a little bit by Thanksgiving and also just by the fact that the year is winding down and we're really starting to reflect on this last year, you can try keeping a daily gratitude log in your target language. This is a really great way to get some writing practice in your target language, even if you don't have a lot of time. It can be a whole journal entry if you want, but it can also just be a sentence or two. And if you don't feel like writing at all, or you really want to practice speaking, you could also just talk to yourself as you're getting ready for bed and go over the things that you're grateful for in your target language. Thinking about the things that you're grateful for each day is a great way to reflect on your day. It's a great way to shift to a more positive mindset. And in this case, it's a great way to get a little bit of practice in your target language in every single day. And the vocabulary will be super relevant because you're talking about things that you're grateful for. You're talking about things that you love and that you care about. So they're going to be words that you want to use again in the future. And so, in the cheesiest way I could possibly end this video, I just want to say that I am super grateful for all of you. This channel is very nearly at 20,000 subscribers, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And I will talk about this more in my end of year video and get sappy again there, but I just feel like I have really pushed myself this year with the content that I've made and I feel really good about it, but I also feel like you all have just been so supportive and I've felt such a strong sense of community. So yeah, you guys are great. I am going to go pet my cat because I have a cat now, and I would love to know what activities you associate with fall or how you like to learn languages in the fall. It's a very different time of year for everyone, I feel like, because some of us are going back to school, some of us are totally out of school, some of us love it, some of us hate it, which of course is the case with every season, but I feel like differences in language learning are really just brought out in the fall based on our routines and our lives. I will see you next Wednesday, and remember, practice makes progress.